Hi everyone, Anthony Fantano here, the internet's busiest music nerd, and it's time for a review of the new Swans record, To Be Kind. I know, this review, it's a little late, but you know, it's 2 hours long! Give me a break!
Hey, give him a break!
Give me a break!
Give him a break!
What is on your wall?
Give him a break!
What is on your wall? Are you spoiling the review right now?
I didn't mean to!
Get on the thing! Put your face on the thing! Spoiler! Oh. This is the latest LP from the long-running experimental rock band that formed over 30 years ago, Swans. In that 30 years, the band has gone through a lot of albums and lineup changes, live records, and a breakup as well as a subsequent reformation. There's been a lot of sonic evolution as well. In their 80s and 90s output, you can hear everything from the grating sounds of noise rock, no wave, and industrial to post-punk, ambient music, post-rock, as well as folk rock and gothic rock leading up to the point when the band broke up.
Annie, don't be so depressed, sad, worried, depressed. People don't really just care about the score, they really just want to hear what you gotta say about the music because they love you so much.
You don't think so?
Yeah, I know so.
You know what? I think you're right.
I believe in you.
Yeah. I'm gonna do it with all my heart and emotions.
You go, girl.
Even though there's all these various genres in Swans' past, they seem to be onto something kind of new with this latest string of records they've been working on, which I actually think started a little rocky with the LP My Father Will Guide Me Up a Rope. The years between this record and 1996's Soundtracks for the Blind were not spent completely silent. I believe there was a Swans B-Sides record that came out, and Michael Gira was spending a lot of time on solo efforts, collaborations, and bands like Angels of Light, which Swans was sounding eerily alike when they came out with this comeback record over here. However, the sort of gothic, folk, and country vibes that came through in that project were changed significantly once Swans dropped the Seer in 2012. It was a record that saw the band filling out their sound with backup vocals, electric guitar, vibraphone, dulcimer, woodwinds, pianos, synths, chimes. Swans' ambition was unignorable from an instrumental standpoint, but from a compositional standpoint as well, since this record had some of the group's most long and challenging material yet, especially with the 32-minute title track on this thing. It was material that was just unsettling, very disturbing, hair-raising, but explosive as well. And groove heavy too. Like on tracks such as Mother of the World, which has these just stuttering riffs that repeat, 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 repeat. And Swans take these repetitive stuttering riffs and just build and build and build on them with larger instrumentation. Or they manage to bring a really clever musical transition through. Moments like this in a way sort of reminded me of the songwriting that Swans were embarking on with the longer tracks off of Soundtracks for the Blind, with the constantly ascending instrumentation on those songs. But they were definitely going for a different vibe, and they had just a larger, more grander presentation on the Seer. It's like on this record they really returned to improve upon the formula they were working with in the mid-90s. So it's no surprise that on this latest record from Swans we see these folk influences drift away even further, and instead we're getting this larger emphasis on heaviness, on instrumental density, on slow, incremental progression, with a lot of these songs as they move along becoming hulking monstrosities that are impossible to take down. It's Swans as you might already know them if you gave a listen to the Seer back in 2012, but in the meantime, since that album was released, I think they've done a great job of improving upon that formula as well, with better production, brighter guitars, heavier bass, more overwhelming crescendos, intense, off-the-wall vocal performances from frontman and main brain Michael Gira. And most importantly, I think Swans does a fantastic job of just keeping the tension up in a lot of these songs, especially the more aggressive and lively tracks on this album. I think To Be Kind displays a mastery of tension. Another reason you might be familiar with Swan's sound on this record is if you've been paying close attention to the band for the past few years, because a lot of this material is kind of already out. Songs like To Be Kind have been in the Swans live set since the Seer tour at least, and a load of the songs on To Be Kind ended up on a live/demo CD that Swans did a limited run of not too long ago, Not Here, Not Now. However, the material on that CD takes on an entirely different life on this record, and the presentation is no less amazing despite the exposure that these songs have already gotten. Screenshot, the first song off of this LP, kicks the entire record off perfectly. It starts with this quiet, hypnotic little riff that has a sinister swing to it. Then the drums pop in. They sound so crisp. They sound so fantastic. They sound so clear throughout this entire record. I just love the drum sounds on this thing. Shout out to John Congleton. And the band slowly builds the pace and the sound and the instrumentation of this track up, piece by piece by piece. They take huge cues from minimalism on this record and just how these songs move forward. The progressions that this track and others bring to the table are just so seamless. They move so fluidly. It's beautiful. And I love the crescendo that this song builds up to. It's like they're really just working on creating this sense of emotional pressure that they hold until the very last moment. Lyrically, Michael Gira goes through a lot of words, pairing them with the word no this, no that, no this, no that. And these words all seem to have some kind of common thread running through them. No dreams, no suffering, no time, no pain, etc. A lot of the words that Michael Gira is saying no to, I think, have a lot to do with humanity and just the idea of life, as well as religion. We could potentially have all of this freedom, and yet we put all these barriers around ourselves, for the most part, that we make up. Or at least that's what I get from the track. I mean, putting the word no in front of a bunch of words over and over and over again, at the end of the day, is kind of vague in a way. So I'm sure there are going to be people out there that come to different conclusions than me. However, it still ended up being an interesting thing to read into as I was listening to this record. And there are similar lyrical and compositional themes that run through the other songs on this record too. Like the song Some Things We Do, which is this somber 5-minute string piece with very chilly, stone-faced vocals fronting the song. And even though 5 minutes is not really a short amount of time for a song, the track does feel comparatively short to the other tracks here. Considering the track comes right after one of the most intense songs on the record and how relaxed it is throughout the entirety of its length, it's kind of like an interlude. And lyrically, we have a similar pattern. Instead of no this, no that, we have we this, we that. We love, we learn, we taste, we fuck, we touch. Michael Gira seems completely obsessed with the things that we do, whether it be by choice or by nature, conditioning. I think in a way Michael might be kind of disappointed with the limitations that mankind has on it, whether they are self-imposed or otherwise. The song A Little God in My Hands also takes this repetitive riff structure, building and building and building, but starts off much funkier, much more rhythmic. It's one of the moments here where Swans takes an already loud and very engaging and very visceral piece of rock music and then just makes it louder and louder and louder. There are some amazingly overwhelming walls of horns and glitchy synthesizers on this track that just make my mouth peel back every time to smile, because man, are they just ear-piercing, body-destroying. Not only that, but just the flavor, the tone of the music on this song. It's so cartoonishly villainous. Like, just imagine the worst villain you've ever seen, ever. He's twirling his mustache, he has a cape, he's tying damsels and kittens and babies to train tracks. And again, we get another similar lyrical pattern. There are parts where Michael Gira does divert from this pattern on this song, but we're getting forever this, forever that, forever lazy. And I dare say, this song sounds a little primacy. A lot of the same riff, build, repetition characteristics show up on Natalie Neal, as well as Oxygen, which I think starts off more aggressive than any other track here, especially when it comes to the rhythms and just the pace of the song. This is a much faster track than many other tracks here. And even though it's 8 minutes long, this really is Swans at their most straightforward on this record, especially with Michael Gira's really animalistic vocal performance. Feed me now! I still have the oxygen! This is the most insane he's sounded since Swan's early days on records like Greed and Filth and Cop. And in a way, I don't think this record is too far off from what those early Swans LPs do formulaically. The ugly, the repetition, the primal appeal of the drums and the grooves. However, with To Be Kind, this formula is being taken to a more refined and complex level, and managing to stir up a slew of different emotions in the process. Like with the track Bring the Sun, which is the first half of this longest song at 34 minutes. And it has one of the most crushing introductions of any song on this album, with all this instrumentation just piling on top of one another, pummeling on this one note over and over and over. It is so heavy and yet very bright and blissful. It's just the power of sound on display on this thing. And these riffs eventually give way to a drone. It's like I'm listening to Swans embrace the idea of music or sound as a religious experience, something that mentally can set you free, bring you to a higher plane. Because simultaneously, while Swans' music is very loud and it is very visceral, I think there are loads of cerebral appeals to the music on this thing too. There are moments on this record that I think are meditative, as well as hellish and fearful. It's like so many songs here just function on the most basic of human emotions. This album is primordial beginnings evolving into complex networks of instrumentation that are all marching to the beat of the same drum, becoming more advanced as they move forward, all focused on the same goal, in the same way that like an ant colony would be, or the human race itself, without being fully conscious of it. But with every song here that goes in this direction, the power and the sound and the size of the music becomes so great that it eventually just crumbles under its own power. That's essentially the end of the song Bring the Sun, and then we have this transition over to Saint Louverture, which sort of seems like the calm after the storm for a moment, but then eventually there's all these noisy riffs hammering down with such relentlessness and speed and ferocity. It's like what was once organized has devolved into chaos. The guitars and the drums become this wall of noise feeding frenzy, all ferociously tearing away at the same rotting corpse. And then the instrumentation grows from that into something organized once again, which is kind of the cycle of life and things on this record. This beginning, order, growth, mayhem, death cycle, which actually might not be too far-fetched of a theory, considering that the second half of this track is named after the Haitian revolutionary that helped put into motion the revolution that eventually freed his country from its French oppressors in the early 1700s and late 1800s. And on this track, Michael Gira brings one of the most insane vocal deliveries of any track on this record, really just sort of shouting, Toussaint! There are moments on this song that devolve simply into Michael rolling his R's and barking. It's just another amazingly intense moment that this record serves up. And then there's tracks on here that I think break up the vibe of the album a little bit, like the song Just a Little Boy, which oddly enough, the very weird soundscape of this song, as well as the oddball vocals, kind of remind me of some tracks from David Lynch's latest few musical efforts. And in the title of the song itself, it says it's dedicated to Chester Burnett, aka Howlin' Wolf, one of the most enigmatic blues singers and songwriters of all time. And I think Swans actually live up to that dedication with how bluesy the drum beat and the bass line of this track are, but of course for this album they're slowed down to the pace at which a predator pursues its prey sneakily. This track doesn't contain one of the more climactic builds on the entire album, but it's still really riveting with Michael Gira's vocal delivery and all of this maniacal laughter that plays here and there throughout the track. I also love the atmospheric drone behind this song and the strung out slide guitars, the lumbering groove which feels incredibly woozy. Then there's the song She Loves Us, one of the more multifaceted tracks on the entire LP. Starts off with one of the most gnarly riffs here. After several minutes, it devolves into these noisy, dark, pummeling, chaotic riffs. And the last 10 minutes are spent sort of with this jangly, really, in a way, joyous psychedelic rock instrumentation that just grows more and more and more sinister. It reminds me of the Stooges in some respects, sort of like listening to I Wanna Be Your Dog. It just has a very steady, patient pace to it, but continues to build and build and build further and further and further as it reaches the end point, of course. Meanwhile, Michael Gira is shouting more vitriol over the instrumentation here. Your name is fuck! Backing all of this very lewd lyricism, a lot of which has to do with sex, with Hallelujah. Another moment on this record bringing very primal human necessities, functions, instincts together with religious imagery. There's Kirsten Supine, which starts off as one of the most beautiful songs on the entire LP, a really pretty ballad with these sparkling melodies hanging behind the vocals, and it just hits another fantastic skipping groove on the second half of the track, which just builds up into eternity and explodes toward the end. And the finisher on here, To Be Kind, has one of the most crushing blows of a finish on the entire record, and is completely deserving of the throne which it has been given on the of this thing. Swans just do such a fantastic job on this record. They do such a great job taking this very clear formula and just applying it in so many different ways, bringing a decent amount of variety to the record. Instrumental variety, emotional variety. There are pretty songs on here. There are hard-hitting songs on here. There are slow burners. There are more direct moments. And even though, yeah, it's not as long as Soundtracks for the Blind, that record to me is not really a holistic album in the way To Be Kind is. Soundtracks for the Blind was literally a soundtrack for a movie that didn't really exist. That was kind of the mental idea that Swans had going into that record. To Be Kind, to me, is Swans' most cohesive, while ambitious album yet. And this plays into why these songs are so long, but I think Swans actually have expanded the notion of entrancing rock instrumentation on this LP. The songs on this record significantly blur the lines between exciting and numbing. And not only is the recording amazing, the pacing of these songs is fantastic. There are just so many interesting passages and twisted layers to these songs. This thing is just so captivating and live and free-flowing, and yet it feels so meticulously placed together. And on top of all of that, I find this excitement slash numbness ambiguity really intriguing. I'm feeling a 10.
It's a 10.
Transition. If you've given this LP a listen, what did you think of it? Did you love it? Did you hate it? Why? What do you think I should review next? And that says Swans, To Be Kind, forever.